wanted to mention very quickly as we head into the next, well, some days it just feels like this time just goes by so fast. Life is, I find this since I've been a kid, it seems to be a slow moving thing while you're really young and a teenager. And then all of a sudden, once you get into your 20s, the pace of it seems to accelerate. Now, I used to always think that was just me, and then people said to me they feel the same way. And lo and behold, a couple of years ago, I remember reading a story. Some researchers who said that, yes, it is actually accelerating as you get older, even though they really can't define what, I guess, time actually is, because apparently it's a human construct, right? We're getting out into the weeds there, aren't we? 924, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Got this I got to share with you quickly because we'll see him, I think it's a week from Friday. Dr. Eric F. Jones is going to be joining us in studio Friday, and I'm trying to see, primary days the 17th, so 18th, 19th, I think the 20th, on the 20th of May, and he uses a holistic systemic approach to wellness, and he's been practicing since 1993. His office is not very far from our studios here at News Radio 1310 KLIX. He's got a master's and doctorate degree in marriage and family therapy. He uses methods of alternative healing such as naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual cognitive self-regulation, and it just all of these, they help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. He's currently accepting new patients and has evening and Saturday appointments available. I know that's crucial for many people. And his number is 731-7178. Get this. I got a message today that he has a new Facebook page up. Eric F. Jones, Ph.D., mental health and wellness therapist. And I need to mention as well, he spells Eric with a C. So if you're looking for his Facebook page, you can see updates there. And in fact, one of those, he says he may be putting up an update about gardening. He says that, working with your hands and out in the dirt is great mental therapy. Even though I didn't necessarily always agree with a politician named Mario Cuomo, years ago I remember him telling us at a speech that he was giving that his mother, who came from Italy and had grown up on a farm, told him when he was a little boy, when you're working with your hands, you're closer to God. Now, some people have, especially those old world people, have a lot of wisdom, and so does Dr. Jones. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. If I could, I want to spend the next 10 minutes of the program talking about what might be the biggest issue in America today. And it's not even, we're all aware of where the economy is and mixed readings on all of that. We're all talking about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But I think the biggest issue at the moment, and while we should be talking about those other issues, we have to talk about this one as well, even though some people claim it's just a distraction. I think that the culture wars are much more than a distraction. Eric Erickson writing today at his website, The Resurgent. Ladies, keeping men out of your bathroom is Jim Crow-style discrimination. Did you know that? Well, according to the federal government, it is. That's coming from the Federal Justice Department. The woman in charge says that what's going on in North Carolina right now, with the bathroom law, as it's called, is akin to denying service to black people back in the 1940s and 1950s in the Deep South. Mr. Erickson says, in other words, if you think a man should use the men's bathroom, then you're the equivalent of Bull Connor. He was the guy who turned water hoses on young children in Birmingham, Alabama back in the early 1960s. And Erickson says if the left can convince courts and the American people that boys can be girls and girls can be boys, they can convince you that right is wrong, wrong is right, up is down is up, and anything else they can get a judge to decide. Now, if you remember reading your Orwell when you were a kid, we had to read him in high school. That was the nature of the government that was created in 1984. In other words, the sky is now, the sea, and the sea is now the sky, and this is how totalitarianism takes its hold. And Erickson is spot on when he talks about this because it is so much like an Orwellian novel that is unfolding in this country as the left tries to get its tentacles into every aspect of your personal life. How about this? This comes from the Daily Signal, Roger Severino, and he says the Department of Justice, its lawsuit against North Carolina is abuse of power. At stake is up to $4.5 billion in federal education funding under a 1972 law known as Title IX and a sea change in employment relations if the Department of Justice prevails under a 1964 law known as Title VII. And the writer says, I must say I'm disappointed in my former colleagues at the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. They know very well when Congress banned discrimination on the basis of sex 52 years ago, and then again 44 years ago, it did not mean gender identity. In fact, one of the best legal minds in the country, at least from a perspective of being able to explain things to the public, is Dr. Andrew Napolitano, or Judge Andrew Napolitano, excuse me. And before I got ready for work this morning, I was watching a little television news. I do that in the morning before I even get out the door. And Judge Napolitano was speaking on Fox and Friends. This is a man who knows his law, having served as a judge in New Jersey for many, many years. But he said, no one ever even contemplated this gender identity notion when that law was passed in 1964. So he said, from his legal perspective, the federal government doesn't have a leg to stand on. The problem is that you have federal judges who are appointed by the Clintons or the Obamas. I say that, I guess, in plural because, as Hillary said when we were president one time, I'm telling you right now, they could end up with a victory in this, and who knows then where this will end. I've got more on this subject coming up in just a few minutes. It's 9:30 on Top Story and 48. I referenced how much money is at stake for North Carolina if it defies the federal government on the bathroom law. $4.5 billion. And I don't know if that's over 1 year or several years, but that's in education aid. The pressure that is going to be applied to Governor Pat McCrory is going to be intense because it is going to be said, well, if it weren't for your governor who is so anachronistic, is that the word, anachronistic? Or out of touch with modern life in America, you wouldn't have this extra burden that you now have to pay for. All you have to do is let this grubby 35-year-old guy who claims he thinks he's a woman come use the bathroom with your 3-year-old, and you can have this money, see? Plus, the lawsuit is going to cost you a fortune, too, as well. It's all your bigoted governor's fault. Well, I'll put it this way. I think Governor McCrory is showing a little bit of political courage. What got me last night, I was watching him. He was the first guest on Greta Van Sustren's program on Fox News Channel. It's called On the Record. And she started, even Greta didn't know the ins and outs of this law. She started saying, well, it's discriminatory against gay people. He said, no, it's not. We have provisions to protect gay people in this law. This is not about gay people because being a transgender, as it's called, or a cross-dresser, as we used to call them, is not the same thing, my friends. It isn't. These are two different items. Being a man who puts on women's clothes does not necessarily make you gay. Some men actually find that they're just attracted so much to the feminine figure that they like to dress this way. Number two, it's never been about discriminating against these people who would put on women's clothes for that reason or feel that they are a woman or vice versa. It's about keeping the perverts out because the perverts will ride this change. They'll use that excuse to get themselves inserted into these rooms, locker rooms or bathrooms as they're called. 9:36, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. It's 49, and we have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next, and you're on the air.
Hi. I have a 13-year-old little girl, and we were in Twin the other day, and she voiced her, this stuff's all over the news, and she's been seeing it, and she was asking me about it. She's worried about it, which irritates me, and then she's more worried about me getting in trouble, and which I would if there was a man in my daughter's bathroom. So there's just too many ramifications to this thing. It's crazy.
I thank you for the telephone call. Well, I'm sympathizing with you because if my daughter now is an adult, but if some fellow walked into the ladies' room while she was in there and I witnessed that happening, I'd be going in right after him, and he'd end up with a knuckle sandwich. They can haul me away and they can lock me away, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to make darn sure he thinks twice before he ever does that again. This is Governor Pat McCrory appearing last night with Greta Van Susteren on Fox on the Record. Take a listen for a moment.
Why did this get to be a topic?
Well, this started with the political left. There was never any problem in North Carolina that we ever knew of. I think it really started in Houston, Texas about 6 months ago, where they had a referendum on a bathroom mandate promoted by the political left, and the voters rejected it 61%. And then it came to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I used to be mayor for 14 years, and the new mayor there made a mandate on all private businesses that they must allow gender identity people and gender expression people to use the bathroom, restroom, or locker room or shower of their choice in the private sector. It was a mandate, in fact, with a fine. And then what the state of North Carolina basically did is that was local government overreach. We do not want to be the bathroom police for the private sector in North Carolina. That's not our job. I have no interest in it. But we did do this for our high schools, our junior highs, our elementary schools, our universities, our highway rest stops, and government buildings. We said you need to go to the restroom, locker room, or shower, multi-use showers, and so forth of what your biological is and gender is based upon what the door says. And next thing I know, this has become a national issue.
I was just reading in the Christian Post. Now, apparently, if you'd like to know where your fellow Americans stand on this, the number of people who have signed up on that list, that internet list, saying they will boycott Target. Target says it will allow men who think they're women and vice versa to use the various facilities. 1.2 million people. Now, if you think 1.2 million have signed, how many more people are sympathetic with this who just haven't had an opportunity yet or seen that website where you can sign up on this petition? A number of Target stores, according to this reporter with the Christian Post, faced protest over the weekend from parents concerned about child sexual predators harming their children following the retail giant's announcement that its policy allows customers who are men according to their birth to go into women's bathrooms and dressing rooms. Parent Johnny Bricken said, "I'm not saying that a transgender would harm a child. What I'm saying is if men are allowed to go into this restroom, children are going to be harmed." Yes, in other words, it's not about the transgendered people who, well, I think they're crazy, but some people out there would say they aren't, but it's not pointed at them. It is simply saying that the needs of our children, our daughters, our sisters, our wives, our mothers, our aunts are more important than the needs of some guy who thinks that his name John is now Jenny, thinks that he needs to go pee in that bathroom. I am going to err on the side of caution and safety for all of the women in my life. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 20 minutes to go this morning. Ooh, we have a Donald Trump update. You know, sometimes even Mr. Trump ends up putting his foot in his mouth. Doesn't seem to harm him, but we'll share an instance where he did that, but also in the very same instance, in the very same interview, where he dressed down one of the icons of liberal media and redeemed himself. Details on the way.